Welcome to another episode of Mexican in the Kitchen. For this video we need very simple ingredients, a few apples, some pineapple, some grapes, raisins, nuts, some powdered sugar, some whipping cream, and some vanilla extract. First I'm going to start with the pineapple. This is canned one because here in Finland you don't get the freshest one and it's hard to find one that's really sweet, but if you live somewhere where you can get fresh pineapple, of course go ahead. I am using 140 grams of pineapple and I will just let it strain here for a bit. I will let it drip all the water. I'm trying to get as much water off as possible because this will make our salad a bit watery and we don't really want that. I will shake it a bit, move it around, try to get all that water off, and I will leave it here just for a bit while I prepare everything else. Just give it some time and it will be ready in a while. Next thing I'm doing is getting the walnuts ready. For these I'll use a knife. They are quite soft. I'm just going to chop them into smaller pieces. How small the pieces are is completely up to you, depends on how chunky you want it to be. Personally, I cut them quite small. I just want it to have a little crunch in there, but if you want to leave them almost full size, that's also fine. For this recipe, I am using 75 grams. Personally, I like using a knife for this, but if you want to use a food processor, for example, you want to give it a go a couple seconds, it's of course completely up to you. I don't do that because I don't like washing it. I think it's too much trouble just for some nuts, but it is okay as well. Once we get the size we want, then we can set them aside and continue. For this recipe, I've seen people use green and red grapes. It's completely up to you which one you prefer. Personally, I like buying red grapes without a seed. For me, I think red grapes are the more Christmassy ones. The color goes really nicely with this salad. It's more of the Christmassy kind of color. And we also have a tradition in New Year where you eat 12 grapes at midnight and then you make 12 wishes. So for me, these grapes are the ones you use during this time of the year. I have seen some people leave the grapes as they are. Personally, I just cut them in half because these ones are a bit too large. And I'm not cutting them into smaller pieces because otherwise they kind of get lost. And I do like them to stand out a bit. For this recipe, I'm using 200 grams of grapes. You can add a bit more or a bit less depending on your preference. Once we're ready cutting these grapes, I'm going to set them aside and we can continue. The last thing I will get ready is the apples, because apples have a very quick oxidation, so we want to get them ready right before we're going to use them. I'm going to start by peeling the apples, and I don't peel apples very often. I usually like the texture, I like the flavor of the skin, but for this recipe we want to peel them because I think it gives a smoother and a way nicer kind of texture. For this recipe I am using Gala apple. That's the one that you find more commonly here in Finland. It's quite cheap and it's very sweet. What kind of apple you use is completely up to you. You can use something that's a bit more crunchy. You can use maybe the Golden Delicious if you don't want it to be too sweet. But I would stay away from the green apples because those are a bit more acid. I don't think it goes as nicely with this kind of recipe, but of course completely up to you. For this I am using 600 grams of apples. I weighed them before peeling them, before cutting them. Once I finish peeling my apples, I am going to clean my board and I can start cutting them. How you want to cut these apples is completely up to you again. This is a very free recipe, you can modify it as you wish. Personally, I like dicing them into these small cubes. That way when you grab a spoon of your salad, then you get a bit of everything in there. You have a chance of mixing everything with every bite. I think that's a way nicer experience. The aunt who used to do this recipe back home, she used to cut apples into quite big chunks, but that was her preference, and again, it's completely up to you. Once we're done, we can set our apples aside and we can continue. At this point, we can start preparing our cream. And in this case, we're going to prepare a chantilly cream. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. This is basically some whipped cream in which we are going to add some powdered sugar. We're going to make it quite sweet and we are adding a bit of vanilla essence. And that's pretty much it, but it gives it a really nice flavor. I am using 330 milliliters of whipping cream, mostly because that's the size of the package. I rounded it down to 300 milliliters. That's how I got my amounts. For 300 milliliters of cream, I am adding 90 grams of powdered sugar. The reason why we are using powdered sugar and not regular one is mainly because it will mix nicer. and we will not be able to notice their sugar when we eat. You will not feel the grains, so it becomes more of a delicate kind of cream. The secret for whipping cream is your cream has to be really cold. It's better to keep it on the fridge until right before you're going to use it. And personally, I throw it into the freezer just for maybe 5-10 minutes before I start. When you start whipping this cream, you will immediately notice it starts to become thicker. And at that point, we're going to start adding sugar slowly. I recommend you add the sugar on top of the cream and then you slowly pull it towards the mixer. Otherwise, you will end up with a huge cloud of sugar in your kitchen. It does become kind of messy, but you can avoid it by adding it slowly and making sure it mixes slowly and steady. After a while, you will notice the cream is thick enough that it stays on its place. And at this point, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of my vanilla extract. I am using a Mexican one. If the one you're using is a bit too strong, maybe use half a spoon first, taste, and then you can adjust. After adding my vanilla extract, I'm just going to mix for a few seconds. I want to make sure everything has mixed nicely, and then I'm going to stop. You don't want to overdo it because otherwise your cream might split and it will get ruined. Once the vanilla extract has mixed nicely, I'm going to stop and I'm going to set this aside. Now we have all of our ingredients ready, and in this case I'm going to use a really big bowl. This is not the bowl where we are serving, so don't worry about it. Use the largest bowl you can find because it will make the mixing easier. I will start by adding my apples, then I will add my grapes, and I will start mixing already. I want everything to be mixed nicely. Next thing I will add is the pineapple. At this point it has been on the strainer for a few minutes. There's a lot of water that has dripped out. You can also use some kitchen paper on it, try to dry it a bit more. But personally I just added it like that, and I'm going to mix everything. At this point I'm also adding some of my raisins. I'm not going to add them all. I have here 45 grams and I will leave some just to top this whole bowl, but I'm adding most of them and mixing. Once I have mixed my fruits, I'm going to add my whipped cream, and at this point I'm using this liquor, so I'm going to try to take as much of this cream, of this chantilly cream, try to add it to my big bowl, and I'm going to start mixing everything together. After cutting my apples, I have tried to make everything quickly because apples start the oxidation process quite quickly. You will notice the apples start turning brown, and that happens because of the contact with oxygen. And at this point, when we add the cream, the fat in the cream, just as with milk in guacamole for example, it will delay that oxidation. So once we add the cream, we mix everything, then we can relax a bit. We don't have to be so quick because our apples will be protected and they will last way longer without becoming brown. At this point, there's not much to do. Just mix everything together. Make sure you are mixing them nicely. Make sure you don't get lumps of grapes or raisins or just apple. It's nicer when you mix everything and you make sure whoever eats these will get a mouthful of everything at the same time. When you take a spoon, you take a bit of everything. That's always the best. Finally, I am adding some nuts, and I'm not using them all. Just like with the raisins, I'm going to set some aside for later when I want to top my salad. Now all we have to do is mix everything together, one last nice mix, and we're done. We can serve. For serving, I kept it quite simple. Just place it on a bowl, top it with some of the raisins and nuts that we set aside. This is quite simple, looks nice, tastes delicious, and we can take it to our Christmas table. This is how I make the apple salad, or it's like Christmas apple salad. I know what you're thinking. I know this is maybe not what you would say it's a salad, but this is how we call it back home, back in Mexico. This is something we have every single Christmas. It was always on the Christmas table. It would be served next to the turkey or the ham, because I don't know about you, but at least in my family, we would always have this very nice contrast of savory and sweet at the same time on the Christmas table. And personally, I love this combination. I know it's a bit weird. I've served this here in Finland with ham and people are like, it tastes good. I understand why would you serve it like that, but it's still more of a dessert for me, which I completely understand. So you can also have it as just a tiny dessert at the end. I really like it as well. It's quite nice. It's very sweet. You have the vanilla, this chantilly kind of cream, whipped cream is really nice. So you can try it either way. I personally would put it on the Christmas table there in the center. Everyone can take some if they want. If they don't want to have it with the savory food, they will have it at the end. Completely up to everyone decision. And I hope you like it. I hope you try something different. I personally like every Christmas to try something different. At least at our place, we will have mostly the same dishes every year, and then one or two different variations that we will play with. We will make something different. Just try something, and then if we like it, it might stay for the next year. If not, you try something else. I think Christmas is a really nice time for doing this. You have the whole family gathered together. You have a lot of people at the kitchen, at least in many families. You know, it's when your aunt, your grandma, your uncles maybe also all gather in the kitchen. They work together. They do a big meal for everyone. So it's a really nice time to try to get different ideas from your family, maybe opinions, taste different stuff. So why not try something new? I hope you like it. Try at home, press like, subscribe, activate the bell, all those kind of things, and see you in the next one.